very regulation, when the British started to colonize the Naga Hills, the British were not actually very interested to take over the Naga Hills, but they actually came out with various exclusive policies to protect their subjects in the plains. And one of such policies is this Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation, announced in 1873, drawn out from the Act of 1870, most popularly of the Queen Victoria Act. As far as the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation is concerned, it has many sections. And if you go through the sections, I'm actually thrown by the magnanimity of the fines that the British colonial government imposed those days. 150 years back, they have said 100 rupees. 100 rupees now will be 1 lakh rupees. To those defaulters, you can imagine the stringent, the seriousness of this very regulation when it was enforced. However, in today's context, we are very unfortunate that that stringentness is not actually being taken into consideration. When the British started to enforce this very regulation, as I said, there are so many records that many European planters were even denied this inner line pass because there was series of scrutiny before anybody is granted this pass. And some of them were even made to shorten their stay when the government found out that the purpose for which they have applied and the activities they were undertaking in the Naga areas were not consonant to each other, so even their stays was shortened, meaning to say that this pass is granted to those people with a specific purpose, and that person should indulge only in that purpose during his stay in the ILB enforced areas. So much so that although our Naga people in those British days were not fully aware of this regulation, they were also aware that the British has implemented a law to segregate the plains and the hills. So on one such occasion in 1915, let me take you this. This is what you read. Muhammadan Fakir was got from Mukchung district, bound on a pole like a pig, and he was taken to DC office. That was the awareness. That's what I mean to say. Are we aware? Those ignorant Naga folks, illiterate, still they were aware. But today, we Nagas, we claim that we are literate, educated, having to exhibit our degrees, are aware or not. That is what I wanted to compare this with. Let us come back to the enforcement of this regulation in the state of Nagaland. As it is mentioned over there, there are no such records available in the early years of the statute. For this, actually, I met our former Chief Minister, Sri S.C. Jamir, and I actually took an interview. I asked him, sir, according to the records, we don't find any existence of ILB as late as 1970s. Then he was very, very honest to tell me that, look, gentlemen, we were busy with the new states. Underground was giving us a lot of problems. We were trying our best to ensure peace and development, for which ILB took a backbench. That is what he replied. Whereas if you look at Mizoram, the moment they got statehood, it was implemented from its very month. That's the difference. The earliest record that I found was the address to the president of the Naga Student Federation by late Chief Minister Mr. Vamuzo in the month of January 1980. This letter of the NSF was written to the Chief Minister in the month of December, most likely, but of course, that record is not readily available. The Chief Minister has requested the NSF not to take the law and order in their own hands, in short. That was actually the intention of the letter. This shows that the Naga Student Federation was spearheading this very movement as late as the 1970s, since the government was busy with other issues. Well, now taking you back to the various committees formed by the state governments. In fact, in the first of this committee, you can find out that I will not be reading out, but the first of its committee formed by the government was in 2007 to be headed by Sri Alamtamshi Jamir. However, this committee could not function and it got defunct. And the next committee that was formed by the state government was under the chairmanship of the then Commissioner, Sri Senti Younger. This committee was very serious. They gave a very befitting reply, a befitting report to the government, and the implementation of which is still avoided. And while this committee was undergoing, another committee was formed, headed by Sri Gesino, the then Deputy Commissioner of Dimapur. They went further ahead and they went to Arunachal Pradesh, they went to Mizoram, and they studied the implementation of this very regulation. And they came out with a very interesting conclusion by saying that the implementation of this regulation in Arunachal and Nagaland is facilitative. And in Mizoram, it's regimental. For which they say that Nagaland government must adopt the style of enforcement that is being implemented in the state of Mizoram. Another very interesting committee formed by the state government was headed by Sri Abhijit Singh. The committee also did a very extensive research, consultation, and they came out with some of the finest recommendations, which also eventually led to the constitution of RIN, Register of Indigenous Inhabitants of Nagaland. And the RIN also completed its tenure, gave recommendation to the state government, but because of various oppositions, although the state government accepted and decided to implement, because of various reasons, it has not been able to get its full attention for implementation. Now, I would like to take you a little bit into the ground detail from the sources of RTI, if you look at the first RDI, in Mokuchung district, an RTI filed by Imti Yabang. It's written over there. And in this, the RTI said ever since statehood, how many ILP has been issued? They said 25,000. And the revenue collected is rupees 47 lakh 57,403. I would say that many of the questions sought by the RTA applicants could not be provided. Therefore, my conclusion is the implementation is not satisfactory. There's no record for penalization. There's no record for deportation. Now, let us come back to another RTI filed in the Deputy Commissioner Office, Kohima. He had mentioned how many people have been issued ILB so far since statehood under your seal and authority or such officers authorized by you. You can read it out. In response, he has said 2,26,563 ILB has been issued till October, from January 2003 to October 2020, which means there is no record prior to 2003. That speaks for itself. And now, some of the question that was put up for question number 3, 4, and 5, the response was that there is no record of any penalization. And of course, in here they have said number of ILB deported to 36. Only 36 persons have been deported so far. Now let us go to a higher monitoring system of the state government. That is, I will not comment on my note to the Deputy Commissioner, although it is very dissatisfactory. Now let us go to another RTI filed in the Office of Commissioner. In this very section, you come across a lot of the question that was put up by the RTI applicant, that the Office of the Commissioner is not well appraised of the situation at that Deputy Commissioner's level, which means to say that there is no coordination between the Office of the Commissioner in Nagaland and the Deputy Commissioners as far as this implementation is concerned. Insofar as this BFR is concerned, I would, having said a little bit on the ground realities, I will say that the onus of responsibility does not lie only with the state government. The people of Nagaland should be equally aware, equally ready to assist the state government. Insofar as Mizoram is concerned, we have come across the significance of the civil society, which are very instrumental in helping the state government. At the same time, the government of Mizoram is equally ready, equally responsive to the concern of the people of Mizoram. So today, if you look at the success of Mizoram in compared with Nagaland, Nagaland enforcement and its success cannot be compared even to the 10% of the state of Mizoram. This is the status of the enforcement of this PFR in the state of Nagaland. I would not like to, as I said, read out, but I would like you to read a little bit of this conclusion as I continue to speak. The Naga Student Federation, through this very seminar, we are very committed to ensure that this very seminar comes out with a holistic approach to this very issue of enforcement. We would like to ensure that this very seminar comes out with all necessary merits and demerits to address this very issue, which has been being addressed at a piecemeal nature. This very issue, I believe that has become the need of this hour. I believe that this very regulation, which actually in the initial stage, the British government had also intended not only to protect the Naga people, but actual intention, which I would weight it more. More of their intention was actually to protect the British subjects in the plains. That was more on their intention, but later on, with the total colonization of the Naga Hills, it became a kind of a gift. It became a kind of a weapon for the Naga people to protect its culture, its people, and even in the early stage, when the Naga people, when Nagaland was carved out as the 16th state, the Naga People's Convention also had actually included in their 16-point memorandum. This BFR 1873 formed the 16th point of their 16-point memorandum. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how many of us are aware. When today our chief advisor of this All Assam Students and Northeast Students Organization mentioned about this CAA. There are both merits and demerits, but let me also tell you that for the first time in the history of Indian Constitution, this Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation 1873 got regularized because of the CAA. Or else, never in the Constitution, this very regulation was mentioned directly. But now, this very regulation has attained a constitutional status, which in fact is also a blessing in disguise. Therefore, I would not like to take time because we are actually rushing against time. So with these feelings, as well as the kind of ground reality, as well as the intention of the British, and the sequence of change that has taken place over the years. There's a saying, time change and people change. Therefore, even the intention of this PFR has also changed. And with this change, the very benefit that we are to draw from this regulation should be capitalized at its maximum.